The trans woman in this highly filtered picture is named Ciara Watkin. Ciara has just been sentenced to 21 months in jail because of deception, and we're going to get into it. In a statement read to the court, the man said he was physically sick when Watkins revealed what she called her massive secret to him. How massive? The truth is, you do have to disclose if you want to have that kind of relationship with somebody so that they know what they're dealing with, what they're possibly opening themselves up to, no pun intended, if the rest of the world ends up finding out. What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, so I'm going to go through this story because a lot of people were sending it to me. But one thing I do want to mention is that I'm recording this second intro after I recorded the full video, and I haven't edited it yet. I'm about to edit it now. But I just wanted to make this second intro because, like I said, it was sent to me and I didn't bother reading it first. I decided to do this one like just reading it on the fly. And of course, having gone off the pictures that I've seen and also having gone off of some of the comments that I had seen, because different people were saying different things. And I was wondering how the trans community was taking it. And I was also just wondering how social media in general was taking it, because I felt like, how could you be fooled on this one? But you'll see like my back and forth where there's different ways that I go through it here. And so there's points where you could say that I'm victim blaming, and there's points where I'm just outright joking. And then by the end, I had a very clear grasp of what had happened and why, even though we as human beings will always have fun with certain situations because that's the way we are, especially in the internet era. But at the same time, we do have to respect that this is actually very serious for some people. And I'm going to go ahead and post it with as minimal editing as possible, as far as me taking out the different emotions I was having or the different things I was saying as jokes, just because I think it's important for all of it to be seen and for you guys to also be honest in your comments down below. So do me that favor and give me that grace for us to have a little bit of fun with it, and at the same time acknowledge that there are very serious points to it too. Also, I know some people are going to get mad at me because this is two videos I've done kind of close in relation to each other where it doesn't paint trans people in the best light. I don't make the news and I'm not responsible for what people send to me. I'll just sometimes find things interesting and be like, okay, I'll check that out. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to paint trans people in any particular light. I'm always very clear about the fact that I've had trans friends my entire adult life. I'm definitely not trying to paint trans people in any kind of light at all. But I am going to say, I think in this story, there are points to be made, and also points where I feel sort of like, okay, I understand why people are saying that too. So, like I said, let's just start with the story. By the way, like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get started. So the headline is Transgender Woman Jailed for Deception, S.A. A trans woman who lied to a man about being a biological female when she performed acts with him has been jailed for 21 months. And I'm not trying to victim blame anyone right here, but if you look at this highly filtered picture and then you look at the picture of what Ciara really looks like, I'm not sure how this man got fooled. I do agree that maybe Ciara did need to go to jail, but I think the court should have made the victim go to an optometrist, because if you thought that that was a woman when you saw this person in person, you either A, have really bad vision, or B, have never seen a woman in your life. I mean, if I saw this person in court and were the judge talking to the victim, I would have to look over my glasses and be like, you really thought that was a woman? And like I said, I'm not trying to victim blame, but I am saying that the victim either grew up without a mother, never saw a woman in his life, or never got close enough to one. Maybe they live in a small remote town and he's never been close enough to a woman to actually... Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Let me go on with the story. Ciara Watkin's victim said he would not have consented to sexual activity if he had known she was biologically male, Durham Crown Court heard. And I also wonder what they did. Like, that could also be a clue. If I were to give any tips to guys that may have questions about whether or not a woman that they meet online is an actual woman, I would say that if all a woman wants to do is suck your and let you fuck her in the ass, you know real women aren't that cool. Just play it, ladies. Don't get mad at me. Just play. It's jokes. It's jokes. But seriously, there aren't a lot of women, especially on the first date, the first time you ever meet a woman, and she's like, you know what? Just let me completely service you. I also want to know what the victim looked like, because he could have been like a geek or an incel, and I'm not trying to be mean. Again, I'm just being as honest with you guys as possible, but he could be like a geek and an incel, and really he hasn't been that close to women, or he doesn't really know, and he just was so dazzled that somebody was into him. Let me go on. Watkin, 21 and from Thornaby, Stockton-on-Tees, had claimed the man would have realized her status, but jurors found her guilty of sexual assault. Recorder Peter Makepeace KC said he was certain the victim fully believed from start to finish that Watkin was a female due to her lies and deception. Watkin, who was born male, had used the name Ciara since childhood, but had not undergone any medical treatment or surgery, the earlier trial at Teesside Crown Court had heard. Well, I guess in her mugshot, she doesn't look as bad. God, that's a rough picture, though. I wonder how she looked when she showed up to the door, because definitely looks like a bloke to me. Watkin and the victim were both 18 when they met on Snapchat, where the defendant used a female cartoon character as a profile picture before meeting in person and going on to have sexual contact, prosecutor Paul Reed said. So you didn't ask for pictures of Ciara, just like regular? And I guess maybe, but if they were both 18 at the time, nobody was really taking advantage of anybody age-wise, so they at least were equally yoked when it comes to age and maybe maturity. And they're both males, so you can't say like girls mature faster than boys or boys mature faster than girls. It's an even fight mentally is what I'm saying. I'm still not saying it's right. Don't get mad at me. It's not what I'm saying at all. There's a lot of room for me to get in trouble on this one. I'm doing my best to be as sympathetic as I possibly can be, but there are questions and there are concerns. Watkin, who was referred to in court by female pronouns, told the man she was on her period to stop him from touching her below the waist, the court heard. And see, to me, again, I have to go back to, even if she was on her period, I cannot imagine any actual woman doing that on a first meeting with a guy because she was going through her period. I would imagine that a real girl would either cancel the date or just be like, I'm not going to be able to do anything. And I know some women that are pretty chill that way when it comes to their relations, let's say, that are really cool, all jokes aside, about the way that they will take care of the guys that they're dating when they're going through that time of month. But I have to fall back to, on a first date, that's just not first date behavior. This is one of those cases where if it looks too good to be true, bad expression, wrong phrase, because this person does not look too good to be true. But this is one of those stories where if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. That's the way that I want to put that. I wish we could see what the victim looked like, just because it's like, was he slow, or is he suffering from some sort of special needs, or what's going on? When Watkin later revealed she was biologically male, the man filed a complaint with the police. He told officers that had he known Watkin's history, he would not have met her, as he did not swing that way. Fair enough for me. I get it. Sometimes you just don't swing that way. If you don't swing that way, you don't swing that way. Also, I want to throw in, when they mentioned that the court was using the pronouns that Ciara would prefer, I think a reason for that might be just to keep the story straight, because if you're saying he and using he, him for both of them, then you could get confused, like, okay, which he are we talking about right now? I've had that happen before. One time I was trying to read a Redux article to my audience on a video a long time ago that I might do an update on. But I was trying to read this article and they were using the proper pronouns of everybody, but it was a trans man and a trans woman, and I kept getting confused because I was like, which he are we talking about? Which she are we talking about? So I can see why the court maybe did that in this particular situation, even though I know some people would say that they never should, because obviously this was happening in the UK. And so, you know, they just passed that thing recently where they're very clear about sex and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, like, I can't speak to why these people do what they do, but I can see why I would do that if it was like, this is going to get confusing and it's going to make the trial take even longer, and you want the jury to be as clear as possible. And so I can see that. In a statement read to the court, the man said he was physically sick when Watkins revealed what she called her massive secret to him. How massive. I really need to grow up. I can admit that. I need to grow up. But to put it like massive secret, it's like, okay. My anaconda don't want none unless you got buns. Having big dick is not very ladylike. I'm going to tell you that much. But to get back to it, he was physically sick. I can honestly see that, you know, like if you really feel taken advantage of and you realize that a person is not what you thought they were, I can definitely see that. And while I am being a little insensitive, it's just because this person just so much doesn't look like a woman to me. And I know that some people are going to get mad, but you guys are just going to have to accept. Sometimes I'm like this, and I'm not trying to be particularly insensitive. I think there are things to be learned from this particular situation, like the fact that trans women need to be honest in every situation. It doesn't matter how good looking you are or how unattractive you are. Either way, you should disclose to your partner or potential partner what's going on. All the girls I knew coming up were very clear with men, because I came up in the generation where people would actually use the gay panic defense and get away with physically harming other people because it was considered that important that people would disclose, or that terrible that people wouldn't disclose, and being gay and tricking somebody into being gay was the way that it was seen. And all the trans women I knew had thousands and thousands of dollars of work put into their faces and their bodies, so they didn't want to mess it up by getting beat up. And also, the people that I knew wanted to be in fulfilled interactions where it was fun for both parties involved. So they were always clear over the phone, because obviously I was before internet times, way before Grindr or any of that stuff. And so they would always just be honest and tell them the only place they wouldn't disclose, which this is completely fair and for safety, and I get this, is if a guy would talk to them at the mall or something like that. Then they would wait to get on the phone to tell them, because they didn't want to take a chance of being physically assaulted in the moment. And for nothing other than the guy just happened to be attracted to them, started talking to them, and then they chose to tell him in that public place. And so what they would do if they were attracted to the guy was be like, give me your number. Spoiler alert though, a lot of these guys knew to begin with, and when they would tell them on the phone, they'd be like, oh yeah, I knew. Some of them would act like they didn't, and some of them genuinely didn't, but most of them knew, because there's always going to be signs. Even with the most passable, there's always going to be signs, but you never know. A woman can have big hands or big feet, and that can be like just something that you thought was a clue, and it turned out they are an actual woman. So you should never assume. And it is, I guess I can see how it is. I just have too much exposure to trans people, so I'm kind of always on the lookout, or would be if it was something I was thinking about having relations with. He said he was shocked and upset about being deceived, adding he felt ashamed and embarrassed and had been ridiculed online due to Watkins' actions and deception. Well, how did your friends end up finding out? I would have taken that one to the grave. Or did Ciara Watkin tell everybody that you guys hooked up? Or how exactly did your friends find out? There's a lot that I would like to know in this story, and not because I would try to re-adjudicate it, but just to kind of see how it went down. It's kind of interesting. The victim had said he was a heterosexual male who would never think about sexual activity with a man and felt he had part of his masculinity taken away. Honestly, that sounds valid enough to me, because yeah, you would feel like you had something taken away from you if you had no idea and ended up in a situation where later on you found out, and also people online are making fun of you, and it's more than just a little bit of embarrassment. This guy is winning me over. In mitigation, Victoria Lamball said Watkins' offenses were not an act of predatory or sadistic behavior, but were driven by shame and a deep sense of discomfort within her own body, rather than a malicious intent to deceive. Miss Lamball said Watkin who has been diagnosed with gender dysphoria, had identified as female since primary school, and been bullied and ridiculed on a daily basis for her presentation. It was hardly surprising, therefore, that Watkins had built up a facade and presented almost as a caricature of herself, which serves to mask the inner turmoil she feels at having been born into the wrong body, Miss Lambaugh said. Well, that I do understand from her side, how, yeah, if you've been made fun of and stuff, then you're not going to want to be the most open, and you just want someone to love you or like you, or a little bit of human contact. And maybe it wasn't as much about trying to be predatory as it was looking for some companionship and hoping that maybe if you got somebody to commit to that degree, then you could break the ice that way. It doesn't make it right, but it does at least add a little bit of the human element to it on what this person may have been thinking. And so while I can understand what the lawyer's trying to say or how they're trying to argue it, at the end of the day, you do have to be honest with people no matter what it is you're going through. And maybe just put it in your actual profile so that you can block people that are mean to you, or if somebody's into that, then they'll just right away know, since it's in your profile. And the flag isn't good enough. I've seen people just try to post the flag and act like they should have known. It's like, no, you actually got to tell them in so many words, however you decide to tell them. You got to be open and upfront with people. I get it. You feel like people don't like you. People have made fun of you your whole life. You've been the oddball out, but that doesn't mean that you get to practice predatory behaviors because you're feeling lonely. Oh, and that part where it said the victim is a heterosexual man who would never think about sexual activity with a man and felt he had part of his masculinity taken away. That's where it is important to be clear about male and female, or men and women. And I saw people trying to do this on this particular Reddit thread where they were like, but it wasn't a man, it was a trans woman. No, when it comes to that, that's the way they see it, as a man, and they have every right to see it as a man. That's why more people need to start just being clear about this, because people are taking a lot of liberties because society and political correctness have made people think that they're supposed to talk a particular way, and that has other people get confused and think that that means that that's what they actually are. She said Watkin, whose parents were drug addicts who neglected her, was a person who simply wanted to be seen as others as she sees herself, and wanted to be loved as the person she perceives herself to be. Well, that's sad and that's too bad. But at the same time, rather than have someone love you as who you perceive yourself to be, why don't you make it your goal to have somebody love you for who you really are? And if that includes being trans, which in your case it does, then that's the goal, is to have somebody actually love you for who you are. Be honest from the beginning. Take the stupid animation or cartoon off of your profile picture. But recorder Makepeace said the victim was totally deceived, adding, I am certain he fully believed throughout, from start to finish, you were of female gender and a birth female. Had to be clear on that one. The judge said Watkin told lies to get away with her deception and knew the man would not have consented to sexual activity had he known she was a birth male with male genitalia. Probably true, or else you wouldn't have lied to begin with. During the trial, Watkin had appeared flippant, disinterested, and bored, and had shown not a shred of remorse, understanding, or common decency towards the victim, and had even sought to blame the man, recorder Makepeace said. The judge told Watkin the victim would have been fully aware of how reporting the assaults to police would expose him to ignorant and thoughtless attack by other people, but he did so to ensure you didn't get away with what you had done, and in the sincere hope he could prevent it from happening to anyone else in the future. Well, any part of me that felt bad for her does not anymore, now that they're saying that she appeared flippant and she tried to blame him. I would like to see how she would blame him. I hope they go into that in the story, but I haven't read this one ahead of time, so I don't really know what we're going to find out and what we're not. Recorder Makepeace said certain newspapers and people on social media had gleefully poured scorn on the man for being fooled. But the judge added the photographs of Watkin that accompanied such posts had been deliberately selected to ridicule the suggestion the victim had been fooled, and there were many other images which demonstrated how convincing Watkins' female appearance could be. Okay, but even in the best pictures, I don't really know what's up with that nose, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything like that, but yeah, I've seen quite a few of the other pictures of Ciara maybe looking a little more dolled up. I personally still wouldn't buy it, but I guess somebody would. And so you get to understand how a person could be kind of fooled if they squint or they have bad eyesight. The judge said Watkin posed a high risk of offending in the same way in the future, and while her gender dysphoria was a factor in the actions, at the heart of it was Watkins' frustration at wanting sexual experiences with heterosexual males, which by definition she needed to deceive to achieve. Yeah, that's the thing. Just because you feel like a woman doesn't mean you can trick straight guys into being with you so that you fulfill that fantasy. The court heard Watkin would serve her sentence at a prison for men, but measures would be in place to minimize the risk to her and maximize the support. Okay, so some counseling and being in solitary or not with general population. She's going to be in the male prison though, so good for her as far as that goes. Watkin must also sign the sex offenders register for 10 years, and a restraining order banning her from contacting the victim was made for life. Speaking after the sentencing, Detective Con Martin Scottson of Cleveland Police said Watkin purposely concealed her sex in order for the sexual activity to take place, adding, had the victim been aware that Ciara was biologically male, he would not have consented. I hope that now this case has been brought to conclusion, the victim can now move forward with his life. Okay, so that's the story, and that was a little bit of a roller coaster for me because, like I said, I hadn't actually read the story. I just kept getting sent to me, and I was like, well, how could this possibly be a real thing? But then after reading the full story and during the full story, I started getting like, yeah, that really is more serious than it would seem at a glance or when you're just trying to have fun. And you really can ruin a person's life by making them go through an experience that they don't want to go through. And that's just as valid to me as any other kind of essay because it's an encounter that somebody didn't want. And it doesn't matter how you identify or what umbrella you fall under. When it comes to that kind of stuff, you do have to be honest with people. And even though they lost me when they said that Ciara had been flippant and wasn't at all remorseful and didn't really care, I still would give anybody that was watching this and maybe a trans person that feels a particular way, because on one Reddit post I saw them trying to go back and forth about how it's not fair basically that trans women have to disclose. That's just a part of life. So if you're gonna live that life, then live that life, but be honest with people and be authentic with people, because that's one thing I do get tired of when it comes to the trans activists is they'll act like they're really proud to be who they are and they fully accept themselves for who they are, and then they'll try to not disclose who they are. So if you're gonna be you and be for reals about it and presenting yourself as you want to present, then be honest with the people where it is the most important. Yeah, if you meet somebody on the street and they're just trying to be your buddy, a hangout friend, and you want to wait to disclose to them, or you want to take your time in that because there's a process and you guys aren't trying to do anything at all, then great, be that person. Like, let your friends find out later. But when you're in situations where it actually does matter, which I think we all would agree, adult relations is a situation where that would matter. That's where you do have to be honest with people, and that's all there is to it. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you want to see another video of my silliness, click the video on your screen. Other than that, as always, thank you for watching. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.